friend of mine sent over a Washington Post article a few days ago, and it almost seemed like he was punking me, like this article couldn't actually exist in a reputable newspaper, like maybe it was from The Onion. And you think to yourself, this can't be real. But it was very real. And this is the headline. Sleepovers have gotten very complicated. What a once simple rite of childhood reveals about the divisions amongst us. It was written by Caitlin Gibson, who is their education reporter. Caitlin writes about one mom who declined a sleepover for her kid. Quote about the mom. She immediately started Googling, are sleepovers good or bad for kids, and child development plus sleepovers and risks and benefits of sleepovers. She listened to child psychologists on TikTok, scrolled through blog posts and searched newspaper articles. Mostly, she says, I was just trying to find a way to feel good about my decision. Dr. Corey Hebert is here, pediatrician extraordinaire. Hey, Doc, it's good to see you. If you're scrolling TikTok to try and feel good about your decisions and get advice for child psychology, the problem might be you, right?
Well, Dr. Google has caused a lot of problems for lots of people for a very long time. And I will say that this is one of the slipperiest slopes that I've ever had to traverse as a physician, right? But the bigger issue here is that we have to have parents that trust themselves more than trust anybody else. I mean, we have so much information now. So when people start to Google anything, all they're going to see is bad stuff about things that they're very concerned about. And so we've got to make sure that we look at this kind of biologically, right? We have something called the hygiene hypothesis. So when babies are born, we don't like to keep them very cooped up, because if they don't get exposed to bacteria and viruses, then their immune systems are actually not going to be ready to when those things come upon them. So we have to think about this in the exact same way. We have to make sure our children are exposed to some of these things, but here's the slippery part. There are child molesters.
Oh, no,
there
no, yeah, no,
are
that's,
no,
no,
that alcohol.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's that part of it, right? But I think about the concerns from parents is that they went through this in this article. How well do we know the parents? Fair. Are there guns in the house? What about alcohol or drugs? What about COVID exposure? Are there older siblings? Will the kids be watching YouTube or TikTok all night? Is it a girls only or girls and boys gathering? What about kids who don't adhere to binary concepts? What might happen if they don't stay the night? What will we miss that they don't? What I thought was interesting in the article was that the risks that you just laid out of not exposing kids to everything. I mean, I remember as a kid, my parents sort of forced me to be friends with and to go to homes that people didn't look like me. They didn't have the same religious views as I did. Certainly didn't have the same political views that my parents did to get that exposure you're talking about. The article didn't even acknowledge that not getting the exposure was a risk.
Yeah, and that's a really big deal, especially coming off of the heels of COVID-19. Our children now are submersed in phone and internet, so they cannot communicate at all with each other. We have to get to the place where children are now back into schools, back in the athletic events, and they have to be able to communicate, and they have to be able to survive out there. And that's why these things are important. You have to have things like sleepovers, but that's why the parents have to do their homework, so you don't let your child go stay with a lunatic. It doesn't matter anything about anything else. You have to do your homework, you know?
It's crazy to me, sort of the amount of bubbleizing, I guess, is exactly what you were talking about. Doc, it's good to see you as always. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.